So your next decision is whether you'd like to have a frame that goes around the outside of your image or not. It's completely your choice. You need to think about whether that's going to help your picture or not. If your picture has lots of teeny tiny details, a frame isn't necessarily going to add to it. It might make it a little bit more noisy and have too much going on. If you didn't add a lot of details in your background, a frame can really help it and make the image look more interesting. It's totally up to you. If you feel like you can work really carefully, a frame would be a good choice. If you feel like you're not going to take your time to do it really well, a frame might not be a good choice. I think that this image would actually work best without a frame. I think there's enough going on and it's interesting without a frame. I wouldn't normally give this image a frame. I'm going to go ahead and do one today, however, just so that you guys can watch how you make one. So you grab a ruler and a nice sharp pencil, and you line your ruler up to the very bottom edge of your paper. Make sure it's on the bottom, and then you hold it down so it doesn't move, and you lightly draw a line across your paper. Then you need to rotate your paper, not the ruler. I'm going to put my ruler on the side, on the bottom right now, and line it up perfectly. And then real lightly, the lightly is super important when we're using a ruler, I'm going to draw that line across. Think about what it would look like if I didn't draw it straight. So if I put my ruler right here, you can think about what that line would look like. If I put it right here, it still wouldn't be straight. If I made it straight but put it right here, it'd give me this really big thick frame. So you always want to line it up carefully to the very bottom edge of your picture. I'm going to carefully draw that across, and then I'm going to rotate my paper once more. And I'm going to put that ruler right on the bottom real carefully, make sure it doesn't move, and then super, super softly draw a line across. Our next step is to go ahead and erase everything that we don't want to be in our frame. We're going to be mostly putting pattern and design in our frame of some kind. So we want to erase everything that shouldn't be in the frame. We need to decide, however, if there's anything we want to stick out into the frame. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and erase these clouds right here. I'm going to use my L eraser with my hand in the shape of an L. And I'm going to erase this corner right here. Sometimes kids like to keep that and have that be part of their pattern. That would be fine. Then I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Now here I am at the hummingbird's tail. I don't really want to cut it off. If I erase that, the frame would make the hummingbird's tail end like here. So instead of erasing the tail, I'm going to erase the frame line in that spot right there. And I'm going to let the hummingbird's tail overlap into the frame. I am going to erase this cloud right here with my L eraser. And then I'm going to think about the sun. I think I'm going to let the sun go out into my frame as well. So right here, I'll erase the frame, but then I'll erase the parts of the frame that go into the sun. Same thing with the hummingbird's wing. I don't want to erase the wing, so instead I'll erase the lines of the frame where they cross the wing so that the wing can stick out into the frame. I am going to erase this cloud right here. And I am going to erase this corner. Now here's the hummingbird's beak. I definitely don't want to cut that off. That would look really strange. So instead, I'll just erase the frame lines and let the hummingbird go out into the frame. Now my flowers, I think I'll also let them stick out into the frame. So I will erase the little frame lines as they grow across the flower. I might need to kind of redraw the flower a little bit later, and I can totally do that. And let's see, I will erase this line. And maybe erase where the frame crosses these petals right here and the stem. And then I'm ready for next steps. When you're thinking about your frame, you can think about all different kinds of design and pattern. You might start with some zigzags or have a kind of organic design that flows through. There might be stripes, there might be dotted lines, there might be circles in your pattern or some kind of a natural shape. Could be some kind of a lightning type shape or interesting stripes. You decide. You could look up a Zentangle pattern. Maybe your pattern has to do with your picture in some way. It's up to you. For my hummingbird picture, I'm going to think about a fairly simple zigzag pattern because there's already so much going on in my picture. I don't feel like I need to add a lot of details. I might add some details to the zigzags once I draw them. Super important when you're thinking about the details in your frame is to think about craftsmanship. If you draw your frame in a really sloppy way, your picture will look sloppy and the frame will kind of take away from all the hard work that you did in your artwork. So make sure as you're thinking about your picture, you're thinking about ways in which your pattern can be carefully done. Maybe you're just drawing polka dots, maybe you're just drawing lines, but you're doing them in a beautiful, careful way. So I'm going to keep adding zigzags. I think I'll do them all the way around my frame. You decide if you'd like your frame to be symmetrical or not. If you want it to be symmetrical all the way around and have the same pattern all the way around, or if you'd like there to be something else happening on two sides of your frame. You decide. I added some shapes to my zigzags to make them a little bit more interesting and broke up that shape a little bit in the frame. Once I'm done with my frame and I've taken my time and done a nice job, Mrs. Reed can improve it and I can move on to the next step, either Sharpie or color. Remember that frame is a choice. You decide if you'd like to have a frame or not, and using Sharpie is a choice. You decide if that's what's best for your picture. I finished most of my outlining with Sharpie, but I thought I'd take a minute to kind of go over a couple of Sharpie rules to help you remember them as you're working. The first thing to remember is that since you can't erase a Sharpie, you want to make sure that you're not talking whenever you have a Sharpie to help you focus on what you're doing. The next thing to remember is to use your Sharpie really gently. These are brand new Sharpies and we want to take care of the tip. It's real easy for a brand new Sharpie to become smushed and not give you that nice crisp line. The next thing to remember is how to hold your Sharpie. Instead of kind of holding it straight up, you want to hold it to the side a little bit. That helps us take care of the tip as well. If you need to use a skinny Sharpie for any little details, like there's a teeny tiny pattern around the hummingbird's eye I might trace, then you actually hold the Sharpie straight up. So remember, if you're doing a teeny Sharpie, which you would only really need in a small space, then you would use that Sharpie straight up. I might use it again right here on the hummingbird's talons right there. Again, if you make a mistake with a Sharpie, there's nothing you can do about that. So you want to kind of take it slow and really focus. We'll talk about erasing our Sharpie lines in a moment. If you used a ruler to draw any of your picture, so for example, if you made a frame or if you have another part of your picture you used a ruler for, make sure you put that ruler back when you go to trace those lines. So I'm going to put my ruler right where it was and carefully trace over those lines with the Sharpie. Otherwise, the ruler will look real sloppy when we try to trace a line that was drawn with a ruler. Freehand, it tends to look pretty sloppy. You'll notice that there's some parts of my picture I haven't traced. So I'm going to finish up the bottom, but I decided I wasn't going to trace the pattern of the feathers on the inside of the hummingbird, and I also didn't trace the clouds. So that's a decision you can make. The last thing you need to do if you chose to use a Sharpie is erase all your pencil lines. If there's any parts of your picture where you decided not to trace over it with Sharpie, try not to erase those, or if you do, just kind of gently sketch them back in. So for example, I'm not going to erase where the bird's feathers are.